talk on it now. Thank you.
Sorry, Julie. Yeah, great. Great, yes, welcome everyone. Thrilled to have two of our students, our graduate students presenting today. Julie Francis will go first. She's one of our master's students. And then Brianna Richardson, our PhD student, will go next. Both are in nursing. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Julie Francis, and you'll have 30 minutes and then same with Brianna. So welcome.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Delucy Julie Francis, Telewi Eskasoni. My name is Julie Francis and I'm from Eskasoni First Nation. I'm a registered nurse and a community health nurse at the Eskasoni Health Center, and I'm also a Master's Science Nursing student at Dalhousie University. I also do pediatric pain research with the IWCAN Aboriginal Children's Hurt and Healing Initiative. My supervisor is Dr. Margot Latimer. My committee members are Jocelyn Vine and Deanna Shepard. My thesis study is an inquiry of early childhood development in a First Nations community and exploring how families experience access and services for children during the early years. So today I'll give you guys some background, go over my purpose, frameworks, and guiding principles, talk about the research questions and objectives, go over the methods, and share with you my anticipated outcomes. I'm just looking at this. So Indigenous can refer to any Indigenous group across the globe, and First Nations are specific groups of Indigenous people in Canada, and Mi'kmaq is a specific First Nation group. I also wanted to give a land acknowledgement. We are on unceded Mi'kmaq territory, and I hope that you can take that acknowledgement with you out onto the land. But these three terms, I'll be using them interchangeably. And optimal child development is different for each and every child. It's about meeting the child where they are, giving them everything they need to thrive. And it's not only specific, like every family is different, but every child in each family is also different. So, and I think that it's mostly about helping them develop their strengths. So Indigenous children are the fastest growing population group in Canada. Early development for Indigenous children takes place between age 0 to 7, which is a time of rapid growth and development and are considered the most important years. Holistic development from an Indigenous perspective includes physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And I'll talk about these 2 points more using the medicine wheel. Indigenous children are at risk of not meeting early development outcomes, which can affect life's trajectory. And the community identified early childhood development as an area that requires immediate attention. Services and programs may not be meeting the needs of the community, and research is needed to help fill in information. So before I started this research process, well, I guess it was the start of the research process, I went to the health director in the community, Sharon Rutherham, and I explained to her, like, I'm doing my master's and I'm about to start doing some research, and I had a topic that I was thinking about, but I wanted to do something that was meaningful for the community. I wanted to do something that would benefit the community. And after we talked for a while, early childhood development and the services was what I came away from that meeting with. So we all know a lot about the social determinants of health and how they impact health, but for Indigenous people, the structural determinants of health really impact our lives. So residential school legacy, intergenerational trauma, high rates of poverty, lack of food security, access to adequate housing and adequate healthcare services, early childhood supports, services and programming can provide protective factors, improve outcomes, and help us overcome challenges and health disparities. But there is a lack of research and data for First Nations children's developmental health. When I was looking through the literature, I felt that there was almost a discriminatory amount of FASD related research with Indigenous people, and not a whole lot on like services or other areas of children's development. I found that there was a lot available more for Australia, and there was one study that in some Mi'kmaq communities in PEI, and they identified early childhood development as a priority. And another study out west, which was urban Indigenous mothers and their experiences with services. But other than that, it was pretty scarce. So the purpose of the study is to provide parents of children aged 0 to 7 who live in MScN First Nation the opportunity to share their experiences with the current systems and services related to the early years development of their children. A second purpose is to use this knowledge to develop recommendations that may be useful for providers to improve support to parents, children, and communities. So my objectives are to provide community leadership with information needed for planning and programming to improve children's outcomes. The study also has decolonizing aims. So using traditional knowledge to decolonize the early years sector, decolonizing research because I chose to use Indigenous methodologies, and decolonizing my own education by taking this opportunity to do just that. Continue to fill the gaps in research and knowledge related to First Nations children during the early years. So my main research question is, what are the experiences of families who access services for children aged 0 to 7 in MScN? And I also want to know, what does early childhood development mean to the Mi'kmaq community? What do parents and elders perceive as important priorities of healthy child development? In terms of services, what are the strengths that facilitate meeting the needs of the children and community? And what are the major gaps in services or barriers to care? So I'm going to be using the medicine wheel as a framework for early childhood development. The medicine wheel has a lot of different meanings. It can represent the 4 directions, the sacred gifts, 4 dimensions of the self, which are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, or the 4 sacred medicines, cedar, sage, tobacco, sweetgrass. And I got this image from the back of a book, and it was done by Merdina Marshall, where she laid everything out just like this, the life cycle on the medicine wheel. And I noticed that the first stage of life was 0 to 7. The first gift is love from the creator, from your parents and your mother. And then on the same page, she breaks down some words and translates them. And the word Mijiwajij is what we use for our children, and she translated that to child under 7. So that's where I got 0 to 7. It's kind of going back to the knowledge that's within the language and, you know, acknowledging that. And that's what, before colonization, that's what we always went by. And I'll also be using Tuwaitsin at optimum. It's an approach, it's a worldview, and it's a concept framework. So Tuwaitsin was a term coined by elders Albert and Merdina Marshall, and they are clear that they're like, we didn't come up with it, it's always been there, we just provided the label for it so that it could be used. So in one eye, you look at the world using 2 eyes, and in one eye, you're using the strengths, benefit, and knowledge of the Western world, and in the other eye, you're using the strengths, benefit, strengths, knowledge of the Indigenous world, and you use both together for the benefit of all. And I read that it's especially beneficial when working with children. Excuse me. So I was really excited to learn about Indigenous methodologies during my graduate experience. And I was happy to be able to use Mi'kmaq knowledge as the guide in epistemology for my study. Like using knowledge found in the language and the medicine media. And I also was very interested when I learned about Joanne Archibald's 7 principles of story work, which are respect, reciprocity, reverence, responsibility, interconnectedness, synergy, and holism. And she describes these as principles and practices. And I felt like for me, with this study, they're integrated in the process as well. So for example, like responsibility and interconnectedness, you might hear me say like our children and our community, and that's just, I feel like the language of our shared responsibility in our relations and how we're embedded in the communities. And children are sacred, they're gifts from the Creator, so the stories that people share will be treated with respect and reverence. And that idea of using story work in my nursing practice and in my experiences with research, it always comes out as a story for people, whether I'm assessing like, what happened, you got hurt, or I'm asking questions in research, people tend to share their stories. So I guess this is in anticipation of that. I'll have the tools that I need to do this research in a good way. Research with Mi'kmaq communities involved in traditional knowledge is safeguarded by communities and organizations. So I had to apply to the Mi'kmaq Ethics Watch, and I applied to IWK Ethics. I also had to have approval from the Eskasoni Health Board, and I'm adhering to the principles of OCAP, so the community will have ownership, control, access, and possession of the data. This is a little bit of an odd spot for this slide, but I also feel like it fit with the flow. Some strengths of the study: it's filling an information gap. It's a community-led initiative. Some limitations are that each community is different and unique because every community is geographically in a different spot. They have access to different services within their own community, and some biases. I'm an RN, I'm an early years service provider. I'm a First Nations community member, and I'm a mother, so I access many of these services myself. And because of that, the Ethics Review Board felt that I shouldn't do the recruitment and I shouldn't do the consents. So I hired an RA, and she'll be recruiting 11 participants using posters, word of mouth, social media, 10 parents and 1 elder, all from the community. And then I'll be doing the data collection, interviews over the phone, one-on-one. And I also have a demographic information and health survey. On that survey, there's questions like, how many children do you have? What are their ages? What kind of services do you access? What are the frequency that you access these services? And then they have the opportunity to rate the services in terms of how they support holistic health. And because of COVID, I had to change the interviews to over phone and virtual, and change the consent process as well to include verbal consent. I'll be using meaning making as part of the interpretation process, and that involves awareness of historical and political factors, especially ones that are most relevant to Indigenous people. So like the structural determinants of health. I'll be using thematic analysis. I just downloaded NVivo and I'm learning how to use it. Using those principles of story work. And I'll be consulting with the health director and an elder during this process. And I'll also kind of be involving participants in this part, just going back and making sure what I have is accurate. The demographic information that I collect will be analyzed just using descriptive statistics. And when it comes time to share the knowledge with people, I'll be sharing it with participants first. And with the community, I was thinking I could make a video or some pamphlets because of COVID. I normally would have had like a group session with food, but I'll be sharing with the Early Childhood Development Working Group, and I'll provide a summary of findings and key messages and recommendations for the Health Board and community stakeholders. I will submit to publications and conference presentations where I'm invited. So I anticipate this evidence is going to fill an information gap and provide knowledge to decision makers to improve care, with the goal being to promote, protect holistic development among children aged 0 to 7 and move towards ensuring our children have everything they need in order to thrive. Thank you. So right now I'm still waiting on my last ethics approval. Like, I already got the feedback and made all my changes that were necessary. So I'm just, everything else is ready to go and I'm excited.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie Francis. I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions and comments. So people can speak up, which is great. But if you're not able to, then typing some things in the chat space would be great. Congratulations. Great work. Good. Well, we're waiting for people to think of their questions and type them. I'll just start off. I'm always so interested in recruitment and discussions I have with my students about whether they should recruit or not. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you hired an RA to do the recruitment. And I think you also said consent, because not all students do it that way, but I think it's contextual. So yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
It was laid out very clear for me by the ethics review feedback as part of my, I don't know if it was in the protocol section, but they were like, someone other than the PI should do the consent and recruitment. I guess because they felt like I have like influence over the community, my relationship with the community, been here as a service provider for 10 years now. So I guess they thought it was a conflict, and I'm okay with that. It's nice to have a team member.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's important for all of us to always be aware of, like who we are as the researcher and our connections with the community. Yeah, so all of those really make sense. Great. Anybody else?
Hi, Julie. It's Marilyn. Thank you. It's great to hear about your work and to see how it's unfolded over the time that you've been doing your research. And I've wondered, now that you're at this place, what are some of the things that you encountered that were surprises for you in the conduct of your research?
Waiting on things is the hardest part, I would say. And on this ethics to provide, like I had to wait for the Escazone Health Board to give me their final letter, and they had issues not related to me that kind of stalled that, and then resubmitting that. And it's just like the waiting part that I didn't factor in or consider. I knew there would be some waiting, just naturally, but I would say that at the end, kind of when I expected to progress a little bit quicker is where I'm kind of surprised.
So there'd be a challenge, for example, if you were planning to do certain things and organized your time accordingly, and then couldn't move ahead because you're dependent on, there's other moving parts to the process. So to follow up with Megan's question around recruitment, and the consenting, any challenges with that? Like your community certainly provided input and direction. And so with that, did it work smoothly?
It did a little bit smoothly. I have like colleagues like Margot and John are they're the first persons who I went to when I got that feedback, and I was like, you know, they gave me advice on what to do. And with that, my research assistant also had to do the TCPS2 certificate training. So I was worried about that because our connection isn't very good out here in Escasoni, and that was one of the things that gave me problems when I was doing that training, but she got it done really quick. So I was happy with that. I think that process went smoother than I thought it was going to go. When I seen the recommendation, I thought, oh my God, but no, it went well.
Great. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
So, thanks, Julie. That was a wonderful presentation, and there's so many nuggets in your presentation that I think maybe I just wanted to highlight. One of the areas of community-based research that you talked about was how you went to the community with one idea, but that wasn't a priority for the community, and the health director identified another priority that was more important from their perspective, and that you shifted that priority or your topic area to reflect that. And then you worked with the community to identify what that would look like in a research project. So I just think that's such a key part of work with Indigenous communities that is important to highlight, that we have to, you know, look to the community to identify their own priorities and work with them to support that. So I just thought that was really important, because as researchers, we're kind of trained to come up with our own ideas and identify it from our clinical practice, which I know you have lots of those ideas as well. But from an Indigenous perspective, supporting the communities with the priorities that they identify. And that's exactly what you did. So you described that process really well. Thanks.
Thanks, Margot.
Hi, Julie, it's Leah. I'm just wondering, I'm muddling through this myself right now, working on my proposals. I'd love to hear any nuggets of guidance you have. I'm just wondering, like, how do you navigate it when the research can sometimes feel really, really personal? And what are some strategies you do to kind of move through that when that happens?
I think being aware of it is the first step, being aware of how you feel, labeling it, and kind of like why, because then it gives you a different mindset and you're able to move through things. I know what you mean. It can be hard doing research on different topics. Sometimes it just hits too close to home, or there's a lot of different things that can stir up different feelings. But another thing too is keep your medicine close. Mine is right there. So that I would say those would be the two best things. And then just take care of yourself. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Alala and Julie. Your presentation was so awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you came today. I'm sorry, my daughter's homesick and I hear her TV.
Any questions, comments from anybody else? Danielle.
Hi, Julie. This is my first time meeting you. Nice to meet you, and thank you for your presentation. I'm really interested about the community-based research, and you talked about the engagement piece. Could you speak, before my curious purposes, could you talk a little bit more about that level of engagement with the community members and the stages of their involvement throughout your research project?
Initially, I was going to focus on women's health, and that's the topic that I went to the health director with. But once I talked to her, and I'm pretty lucky, like her office is in just the next kind of unit away from me. So one day I went over and we just had like a really casual talk about it. I think I do have an advantage of being a First Nations community member. That's why I had to include it in my biases. And we just had like some casual conversations over the course of the early part of the work. I also had to let her know after I met with my committee, because my initial study was going to be bigger. I was going to talk to healthcare professionals as well and doing kind of like an environmental scan. And my committee told me to calm down, that they were like, your focus is to graduate and this project shouldn't be this big. So I pared it down and I went back to her and I let her know, like, just keeping her informed along with it, because, you know, we still have this main goal, but it's not going to look exactly the same as when I started. And another thing that I did, just kind of casually, I went to go visit an elder in the community, and I was really scared. This was before really COVID. And I felt good at the same time, because I knew that this elder was one of my dad's close friends, and my dad like did work in his house. So I felt comfortable and he was very welcome. And I just wanted to go talk to him about what I was doing. And he gave me really good feedback and a lot of reassurance. And I can't remember the word that he used, but he said that like the translation that I got was doing things for people, or talking for people who can't talk for themselves, or kind of like being the voice for people who can't be their own voice. That was the main takeaway that I got from talking with him. And then I guess the community nurses, like we have our just what we see trends in the community as well. And I felt like, again, this was a good way to go, because like we go to the schools, we're involved in all parts of the community. And I just, once we came up with this topic, I kind of knew that it was the right thing to do. And I felt a new sense of like motivation, and that was really good, because you need it, right? So I was really happy to choose this topic and this path. I hope I answered your question.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you for all your questions and your answers, Julie Francis. It is 12:30, so yeah, thank you for an excellent presentation and wishing you well with your data collection.
Megan, can I make one quick comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to highlight, Julie, that the way you just explained the sequence and how the journey of coming up with the topic, I just find that so incredibly inspiring. And I can understand why it would sit so well in yourself. And I just think that is something so important for all of us to be thinking about, because when you get to that sweet spot where you really feel that way, you're onto something good. So I just think there's so much meaning in just that description that you just gave us. So thank you. Very, very inspiring.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, Brianna, we're going to turn it over to you. So if you'd like to share your screen and PowerPoint, I'm just going to let you take the stage.
Wonderful. First off, thank you so much, Julie, for setting the tone for a great session today. It was really interesting. It's been so long since I've connected with you. I feel like I can remember distant memories back in learning how to use Brightspace or something back in 2016. So it's great to see kind of how far you've come and learn about the work that you're doing. I did want to say, whenever you brought up the point about the waiting game, I really feel that, and kind of I have many expectations for my project too, that that I'd be done right now, if being one of them. And as you'll find out in a moment, I'm not quite done. So there's lots of learning that comes in between the waiting game, and it's a fun process kind of throughout. So I'm just going to get set up to share here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to get set to it. Okay, so thank you again. Similar to Julie, I'm going to present the work that I'm doing as part of my doctoral study. So it's entitled The Parental Prevention of Newborn Pain, which is an evaluation of an eHealth learning platform to determine acceptability, feasibility, and utilization of parent-led pain management. And I am really excited to share this work with you today. It's been a while since I've presented on this and kind of talked about it in a more formal way. So it's exciting to get to share my progress to date. This presentation will go through the background, of course, kind of set the stage for why this research was so important, and then go into briefly discussing the research design and providing a study overview. This study was conducted or is being conducted in several stages, and stage 1 has been completed. So I have some preliminary findings that I'm going to incorporate in this presentation and share with you all today. And then as well, I'm going to talk about the evolution of the study intervention, because that's is the main aspect of this work. Then I'll share next steps and this overall significance of this project. First, I just wanted to start off by acknowledging this work would certainly not be possible without the amazing guidance and support through my supervisory committee, which some are present today, which is great. So my supervisor, Dr. Marsha Campbell-Yo, and then Dr. Martin Meisner, Dr. Latimer, who's here, and Dr. Smith and McGrath as well. And then the project collaborators. So I had assembled a stakeholder committee based off of the great guidance from Dr. Latimer during my proposal review meeting. So I'll talk about the stakeholder committee in a little further down the slides. And then as well, Carrie Tiffin, who's the graphic designer that I worked with throughout the development of this project. And you'll see, as you notice on the previous slides, there you'll see her graphics that she's created throughout. And then of course, the financial support that I have received through funding through the institutional bodies that are listed in that picture below. So to kind of now jump right into it with the background. So all newborns routinely require painful procedures as a part of their normal care to ensure that they are healthy. Understandably, due to their critical conditions, infants that require intensive care in the neonatal intensive care unit or the NICU are known to receive the highest amount of pain exposure, receiving on average 12 painful procedures per day. But also healthy full-term infants can receive many needle-related procedures. And these would be like the vitamin K injection that babies receive shortly after their birth, newborn metabolic screening, and immunizations as well. Sadly, most infants don't receive any form or little form of pain treatment. And this untreated pain can affect how babies feel and react to later pain. And then early pain exposure has also been linked with fear related to needle procedures. And this has been noted as a contributing factor in the growing vaccine hesitancy rate too. So that's kind of particularly important as vaccines have been pretty prevalent in our daily conversations now. So there is evidence to support ways in which parents can reduce their baby's pain, such as by breastfeeding. But however, many parents are still unaware of this benefit. They often feel distress when seeing their child in pain, which may lead them to turn to the internet to search for health information, both kind of with regards to general health. That's very common amongst parents right now, but then we have found specifically with infant pain management as well. But we had previously conducted a review of parent-targeted resources about pain management and identified that there were few evidence-based resources that were available on the internet. So many parents remain ill-equipped and uninformed, relatively uninformed about their role in pain management. So it really is important to meet parents' informational needs by offering accessible, evidence-based education. And I apologize if you hear my dog, he just got up. He must know that I'm presenting, so he might grab a squeaky toy or something. Just bear with me. Okay, so just another kind of note to provide some background. Led by my supervisor, Marcia, the IWK Health Center has developed a novel e-health learning platform called NICU Home. And this platform is aimed at increasing parental presence and capacity in the NICU by providing unlimited access to interactive and an educational platform. It's consisting of different care topics that also does include pain management specifically. And although it's currently designed for neonatal populations in a tertiary level NICU, there are many elements of the educational chapters within NICU Home that are also applicable to healthy full-term newborns. NICU Home also does strongly value the power of parents whenever they're involved with their infant's care and with pain management. And they see the benefit of this going beyond the NICU. So considering NICU Home, there are no comparable resources currently in Atlantic Canada that provide evidence-based education on pain management practices for that healthy full-term infant population, just usually verbal instruction to parents by healthcare providers. So that kind of creates the purpose for this study, where this study does aim to develop a novel e-health resource entitled Parenting Pain Away by adapting the existing educational material from NICU Home and using it to educate parents on all aspects of newborn pain management during procedures. This study also aims to assess parental acceptability, knowledge uptake, and impact of Parenting Pain Away when it is provided antenatally and then evaluated after childbirth at hospitals in Prince Edward Island. Prince Edward Island, just kind of wanted to note, it was chosen because of its strong partnership with the IWK Health, and also anecdotal evidence of inconsistent pain management in this healthy full-term population, coming from different care providers in the hospitals here. As well, it is my home, so I'm speaking to you from Prince Edward Island today. So it has been great to be able to position this work in a place that's so meaningful to me and is where I spend my day to day. Okay, just to kind of highlight, I have lots to include in this presentation. So briefly, this project has used a staged approach, and this research does follow kind of a more applied research design to develop and evaluate the eHealth resource, which I mentioned, Parenting Pain Away. So it'll elicit both qualitative and quantitative data. The objectives guiding this study are presented on this slide. So the first is to evaluate the usability of the eHealth educational resource. Second, to evaluate if the eHealth resource is acceptable to parents and a feasible intervention to administer prenatally. And then the third is to determine if the eHealth resource influences parental knowledge, perceived self-efficacy, and involvement in pain management in early life. And then the study seeks to address the following research questions that are provided on this slide. And these two research questions really do reflect the second and third objective of that were just mentioned on the previous slide. So we'll dive right into a little introduction about what the study intervention actually is. So I've said a couple times it's an eHealth educational resource, but when you get down to it, it's a website. So it's designed to help families be confident in partnering with their healthcare teams to manage infant pain that's experienced during minor procedures, like needle-related procedures that I briefly mentioned in the background. As I mentioned before, the website's name is Parenting Pain Away, and as you can see, there's the logo on this slide here. The main goal of Parenting Pain Away is to really innovate healthcare for growing families through parental involvement, specifically with pain management, as I said. And this innovation gives us the opportunity to make best use of resources and evidence and provide accessible support to families. Of course, this website will be available 24/7 on whatever device participants prefer to use, whether that's a computer, smartphone, or a tablet. So as I mentioned, this research is being conducted in 3 stages, and I'll briefly go through these. So first, we have the preliminary stage, and this was really the development of that eHealth resource, so of Parenting Pain Away. This was done using current scientific evidence, and then by adapting educational material from NICU Home, and as well consultation with key stakeholders. So as I mentioned in the acknowledgements, we had a stakeholder committee arranged for this project, and on January 20th, 2020, a committee of stakeholders that were comprised of parents, clinicians, administrators, and researchers in perinatal health care areas all met and came together to review the study website and then inform the overall study plan. So this stage really accounted for the preliminary work that was required before further testing with participants. And then I'll talk about stage 1. This was the refinement of Parenting Pain Away of the website. So this was conducted through iterative cycles of usability testing, which is common practice in eHealth or technology design, I should say. The usability testing was individual interviews with a maximum of 5 participants per cycle. And these participants were parents of healthy full-term infants or expectant parents. And participants were directed to use the Think Aloud approach, which is where they verbalize kind of what they're seeing and what they're thinking as they're navigating through the Parenting Pain Away website. Testing sessions occurred via Zoom, they were supposed to happen in person, but pivoted to using Zoom because, of course, of the pandemic. And then all sessions followed a semi-structured script to guide parents as they navigated through the website. And the sessions were also recorded to facilitate analysis of the participant feedback after the fact. So there were 2 questionnaires that were also given to participants to obtain demographics, and then it's also to gather information on the acceptability and participant satisfaction of Parenting Pain Away. And this was done using the post-study system post-study system usability questionnaire. It's a long title. Perfect. And then finally, stage 2, which is yet to be conducted, but this is the evaluation stage to determine if parents like this resource, if it's practical to use in clinical settings, and if after using the resource, parents have greater knowledge and confidence with pain management, and if they actually do use pain relieving techniques during their newborn's procedures. So in this stage, participants will receive access to Parenting Pain Away prenatally, and then after the birth of their baby, the impact of this resource will be evaluated. So as I mentioned before, stage 1 is complete, and I've conducted a preliminary analysis of the participant data. So I'll briefly highlight kind of key findings for you in the following slides. So stage 1, again, was that usability testing, and we had a total of 10 participants participate in 2 cycles. So there were 5 participants in each cycle. In terms of key demographics, I pulled out just a few that I collected. I presented them per cycle on the table that you see on this slide. The average age was similar in both cycles, with 29 years of parents in cycle 1 and around 30 years in cycle 2. There was a mix of participants who identified as mother or father in both cycles. All participants were white and all were married or common law, except for 1 participant in cycle 1 who did report that they were in a relationship. And then all participants had post-secondary education as well. And I did just want to highlight that at the time of the interviews for cycle 1, all of the participants were expecting. So either they or their partner was pregnant, whereas in cycle 2, 4 of the participants had recently given birth. So just kind of a little bit of variation that we get to see between the 2 cycles. And then finally, only 3 participants in total were considered as first-time parents, 2 in cycle 2 and then 1 in cycle 1. So overall, just the diversity in terms of the parent type, perinatal status, and parity was great and very informative to kind of their differing lenses as they reviewed the website. So I'm just going to briefly comment on how satisfied the participants were with Parenting Pain Away in stage 1. So again, this was measured using that post-study system usability questionnaire, and this is a widely used usability assessment with strong psychometric properties. It's a 16-item, 7-point scale that yields an overall average score, and then as well can be divided into 3 subscales, which you can see on the table presented on this slide. So the first subscale is system usefulness, which is how useful or functional Parenting Pain Away would be. Information quality, which is related specifically to the content. And then the interface quality. So aspects like, was Parenting Pain Away pleasant, and was it up to the participants' expectations? To note, the lower the score, the better the participant satisfaction. And I'll direct your attention to the scores for cycle 1 and 2. As you can see, in both cycles, the scores are pretty low. So overall, participants were fairly satisfied with Parenting Pain Away. And you'll note that there is a difference in overall average and each subscale as well in cycle 2, where the participants reported being more satisfied, which is excellent. The greatest difference between the cycles was found within the information quality, and this really related to 2 specific items on the PSSUQ scale. The first was the information provided on Parenting Pain Away was clear, and then the second was the organization of the information on Parenting Pain Away was clear. And this difference was really expected and hoped for because there were significant changes made to the amount of content and to how the content was presented throughout the website based on the feedback of participants in cycle 1. So that was really reassuring to see that change. And there were 2 additional questions that I did want to incorporate, and I almost didn't present this, but I thought it was might be nice to share. So in stage 1, I did ask some specific questions to the participants that were directed to gain greater insight and inform the direction of the stage 2 procedures. So the first question I asked participants that hypothetically, if they were participating in a study that was testing the usefulness of this website during pregnancy, would they like to receive a reminder from participants that they were participating in this study? And to that question, 4 participants responded yes, and 5 participants responded no. And then there was 1 who preferred not to answer. And then the second question was, would you complete a brief daily diary that asks about pain management while the participant will be in the hospital after the birth of their baby? And to this, 8 of the participants responded yes, and 2 responded no. So as I mentioned, getting this input from the target population for stage 2 really did help to inform the study plan for the second stage. And while the majority of participants reported not wanting a reminder before birth for that first question, it still was decided that 1 reminder at 39 weeks gestation would still occur, mostly to help retention of participants, excuse me, and then initiate data collection in stage 2. So it's kind of nice to tap into the perspectives of the target population and through stage 1 so that I could really inform stage 2. Okay, and just a couple more slides talking about stage 1. So I wanted to share a little taste of some of the participant commentary during the usability testing. So participant data, narrative data was coded under 4 predetermined themes. So they're presented here on this slide: look and feel, navigation, content, and features. And I'll just kind of highlight the different comments between cycle 1 and cycle 2. So in cycle 1, a participant reported related to look and feel that they liked the overall site. They reported that it felt uniform and the page titles were trendy, quote that word, and had a good balance of representations of fathers, which was great to see that acknowledged. Then with navigation, there was a suggestion that the primary navigation, which is the website's menu options, should show everything that the site offers so that so users or participants can easily see what's captured in the website. And then with content, participants disclosed that they had ADHD, noted that the large paragraphs are difficult to process. And this was really a common statement across all participants. And then finally, with features, a participant did note that they liked when videos played on the same page rather than the video opening up to a new tab on their browser and taking them away from the website. And then for cycle 2, for look and feel, a participant reported that they really liked the bolded elements, felt like they could just read the bolded content and confidently know that they are getting the most important information. And then in terms of navigation, there was a concern noted and a suggestion also offered by this participant where they really did feel lost in certain sections of the website through the navigation prompts that were originally provided on the bottom of each page within the site. And they suggested simplifying. So that was really valuable feedback for me to take into the final design. And then in terms of content, another participant reported that as a father, they would really use, this is a resource that he would actually use. So he noted wanting to be involved in his newborn care and stated that procedural pain management was something that he as a father could actually do. So that was great feedback to hear. And then finally for features, on the website, there is the option to expand certain content through a drop-down feature. And this is identified through a plus sign. And then one of the participants suggested once it is expanded, making that sign turn into a negative to know that you can recollapse that information. And I'll just give you an example because it's hard to explain. But as you can see in the first photo on top, each of these kind of bolded terms do expand to more information, and I somehow was able to figure out how to code and make it turn into a minus sign once it's been expanded, so that was fantastic. And again, to kind of wrap this up, all the feedback was incredibly valuable and has transformed the website at each cycle, and for the finalized design too. Oops, sorry. Here we go. So just briefly, I wanted to incorporate some visuals just to show how Parenting Pain Away has evolved throughout the preliminary stage and then stage 2. Beginning with the basic template of the website that you see on the left-hand side of this slide. Then I collaborated with Carrie Tiffin, who was a graphic designer, and she really helped transform it through branding the website, and kind of overall graphics and look and feel were really enhanced with her help. Again, with her consultation, the homepage went through quite a few iterations, as you can see kind of from the pictures here. And then to finally arrive at a more engaging homepage design that you should see on the slide. Again, the feedback from participants was critical in refining the homepage design through the entire site, but mostly the homepage. That was a hill for me to climb over and accomplish. Okay, so next steps, just looking at the time, I won't really go too in depth with stage 2 because I did mention it earlier, but that is the next step. And on the right-hand side, that graphic that you see on this slide, that is an example of the study invitation or information letter that was designed by Carrie Tiffin as well. So I'm really excited and hopeful to recruit expecting parents in the next, hopefully, couple weeks and get their feedback and find out what the impact is of this actual website. So to kind of finish off the significance of this project, so perinatal e-health interventions have been found to improve parental and neonatal outcomes by enhancing the accessibility of evidence-based information. And given the effects of untreated pain that I highlighted in the background, it really is essential for us to attend to the informational needs of parents by utilizing innovative but also empowering designs, which I hope has been accomplished through this website. And so this study does aim to co-create a sustainable, accessible resource that improves health outcomes of islanders with the developmental support directly from island parents. Also consistent with the core values of IWK Health, this study builds on innovation that was created at IWK for the NICU, but then also extends to healthy term newborns and PEI to support the confidence and capacity of parents across the Maritimes. And I'll end off with just a picture that Carrie, the graphic designer, surprised me with, a picture of my dog and I. So thank you everyone for listening. There's a lot in that presentation, and I know I kind of went over time a little bit to allow for questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much. We have about 3 minutes. I'm going to throw it out to the audience for questions.
Hey, Brianna, that was an awesome presentation. I really like the graphics too. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that your sample so far has been really homogenous in terms of being like mostly white folks and like people who are in relationships and like relatively well off. So I'm just wondering, like, do you have any plans in the future, like for like a postdoc or once you're working as a professor, for developing it further and looking at how different folks from different communities might respond to the work?
Yes, I would absolutely love that. And I do really hope in stage 2 that there is more diversity in the population, in the sample. My intentions were to have some variation within the sample for stage 1, but unfortunately, and this is something that I didn't really touch on in this presentation, but the process for recruiting was really tough. It seemed like there was no interest in participating in this study, which perhaps it would be great to get some feedback. Maybe it was the approach or kind of just the time. This was all ongoing at the time of COVID as well too. So kind of in terms of information overload and participation in studies, this might not have been the priority. So I was a little discouraged to not have kind of more uptake from people of differing backgrounds too. So hopefully within stage 2, we'll see that. I am partnering with specific health clinics here and prenatal areas to be able to get that information out. So I am really hopeful that it won't just be as homogenous, like you said. And then yes, certainly for future work, collaborating.
Awesome, thank you, great presentation.
Thanks, Leah.
One question from Danielle in the chat. Thank you. Are you doing anything differently regarding recruitment to get more diverse sample? Okay.
Yeah, great. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I think my setup for stage 2 was actually collaborating with the health clinics. I have partners with the 2 obstetrician clinics that are the main ones that are here, and then also with various primary care centers. And I think that will help to extend the reach a little bit more, I hope at least, as stage 1 was, a lot of the recruitment came specifically from social media. So I'm not quite sure if that really had any kind of influence on who were actually showing interest in the study or not, but I am very hopeful for stage 2 that there'll be more diversity. Thanks, Danielle and Leah, those great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, it's Keisha. Can I just jump in quickly? I know we're at time, but I just wanted to say amazing presentation, Brianna. So fabulous. I just love seeing all of the work and everything that you have done. My only comment I just wanted to add on to, I guess, related to the diversity piece, and just when we think about, pain related to Black and Indigenous communities and how, there's still a lot of research that shows that pain is being either under or untreated, especially amongst like Black and Indigenous children and infants. I do think your aspirations to include a diverse sample are so important. So thank you for considering that and moving in that direction.
Thank you. Marco has been fantastic to link me with leadership for the Mi'kmaq community here as well too. And I haven't been able to establish a connection, but I do hope to try again at the second stage because I recognize, know all the research with that. And it is really important to make sure that this website also does reflect their needs as well. Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Great to hear from you all.
Thank you so much, Brianna. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think with both of the presentation, it just really shows how important it is to reach out to communities just for the recruitment stage and to ensure that we get who we need to get. So wonderful research, both of you. Thank you so much. Okay, yes, we are at time. So I will call this meeting to an end, but we'll see everybody else again when we have presentations at our research at noon.